Here's another video on how to play setons. This time we're going to look at the beach spot. Once again we're going to look at Dim, because he is the best player, so he's got the best builds most likely. So on this video, like on the previous one, I encourage after you kick a noob, give them this video so they can come back and compete. So let's see, on pause. So one thing you should do with these builds, memorize the first 3-4 minutes. Don't try to be creative with it. So the important thing about the beach spot, so let's first look at what Dim's doing. The hydro is really close, so you really want to utilize it. So your power that you're going to get early, you see Dim here only going with 3 PGens. Sometimes he goes with 4. Depends what you want to do, how quickly you want to get air. So 3 to 4 PGens, 2 mass extractors, and factor. Of course, factory always first. And then he's going to send his ACU close to the hydro and help his ACU build the hydro. And as with any builds, where you send your NGs is the most important thing. You can see it's basically an NG spam, and the default order is just to patrol on some trees. Let's see. Let's just zoom out. So once again on the beach spot, this is a vulnerable place for you. You want to send an NG there early. But you do have an advantage, you can get your navy started much sooner than rock. So now you can see mass extractor, PGen. Now as soon as this NG comes out, this is actually important. Notice how Dim is finishing up his second and third structure, and the next 3 structures are really close to where his first NG came out. So if you can arrange your builds in such a way that you can get your first NG to come out at the position where you have your 4th, 5th, and 6th structures, you can have your NG help there right away instead of walking around. So just a minor detail, and you can see as soon as the Dim switches, he's going to have the NG help. So it's just an efficiency thing for when you're doing your builds. And of course, Dim is also going to get the other 2 mass extractors. So all 4 mass extractors. You can see the second NG going to the top spot, and he's going to get a factory there as well as radar. If you can get a factory in that spot, you're pretty much in good shape. But if you go there so late you don't get a factory, you are very vulnerable. So now you can see that first NG, after helping Dim with these, the NG didn't walk to those other mass extractors, just too much walking, went straight to the hydro. And now Dim's AC is going to get there and going to get an air factory after the hydro. So 3 PGens, a hydro, air factory, 4 PGens. So to this point, just memorize this exactly what it is. And once again, you see second air, pretty standard for naval builds. And then you also see, so these 2 mass extractors, sometimes people use 2 NGs to get them, sometimes 1. One thing you can try getting is this rock before the air player. Sometimes you can send an NG here to this mass spot straight to this rock, but the mid players probably wants it for themselves. So if we recap what happened with the NGs, you can see the first NG helped Dim with PGens, then went to the hydro. Second NG went up to get these very vulnerable 3 mass spots. So then the third NG, third and the fourth, went after the mass extractors. And the rest of the NGs, they're going to here to get these trees as well as to help the ACU. So it's compared to the rock spot, the NGs are much faster in terms of expanding to these other mass spots. Now you can see what Dim's going to build, a bomber. Of course the bomber's got the radar on it, plus it's very aggressive. And you can see he's coming up on 230. With his bomber he can either challenge for the island, or in this case he's going to try to help the middle. If you can get those early NGs for the mid player, it's going to be very devastating. And then of course after these 4 PGens, so you're going to see he's going to have hydro, 7 PGens, and he's going to get 2 more factories. So that also hydro on 7 PGens, that's the same thing as 12 PGens. If you remember on the rock spot it was 13 PGens. So you want to be in that range in terms of power. Something around 12 PGens. You see all the NGs getting here. He's got a lot of build capacity if he needs to ever use it in this area, but right now they're not building because he doesn't have the capacity to build in terms of resources, so they're just reclaiming trees. So no upgrades yet on these mass extractors. Before upgrades he's going to get more factories get a little more economy for himself. He just got a nice boost from the mid player. So Asti doing a good thing for his allies. And if he gets the boost, then he can start upgrading. But notice as soon as he starts upgrading, he is losing power. And a lot of the power is going to come from reclaiming these trees. That's why these two factories and making NGs are actually a nice power boost. So as he's doing that, he's also of course about to bomb. It looks like it's VIP. So it looks like he does have a little power deficit, but that's alright. It's not a massive power deficit, and it's gonna be corrected by the NGs. This is an excellent spot to bomb if you can bomb that. That's not the best bomber micro, but it's gonna do the job. Plus this forces attacking some player early, forces the other players. You can see now Sind had to, it's gonna be an excellent bomb. Was forced to put his air to work, so he's not going to be using his air to attack McFly. So now once again you see mass extractors being upgraded plus a little more power for them. He saw they had that deficit, so now he's going to use his ACU plus some NGs to help out on this upgrades. Also during this time you can see he is scouting to see how early Hawk is going to be with Navy. So if he sees Navy now, scouting is a really important thing. He is in a position to start his own Navy, but since he doesn't see that, he doesn't see the Navy, he can do a little more ecoing. So that's a really important thing. So now you see he's doing a little more ecoing. Now it looks like he overbuilt his power a little bit. He had those early deficits, and it's really hard to predict because you have 3 allies. Depending on how much power they get, it's going to be different. And he actually just realized that Hawk was quite late getting his island, but there's the transport now. And actually this is a pretty late NG here. This is pretty vulnerable and on Dim's part. He could have been dropped. This factory is coming up on minute 5, so this is just to take a note when you're playing rock. This is a very vulnerable situation. A bomber plus a drop do a lot of damage. Now you can see him coming up on minute 6. He is going to be getting these 2 factories. Another thing that might happen around minute 6, Dim did make a little extra power for himself. You should see some of these NGs start making a row of T1 power. And you can see this is a very important plane from Dim. It's about to be taken out. He was scouting for early navies. That's probably the most important unit right now for Dim. Now Dim is going into minute 6. He's going to start a navy. As soon as you start that, as long as you stay in T1 and not put too many NGs here, you can still do a lot of upgrading. And now you can see one at a time with NGs helping out. Now you can finally see scouts from Hawk. Two factories. One of these is going to go T2 eventually, as soon as Dim decides that he's going to put a lot of eco on it. But for now he's just going to make frigates, and he's got build capacity in the water. In case he sees a sub, he can get a quick torpedo launcher out to prevent his navy from getting killed. So now what's happening, he is basically just getting T2 mass extractors. You can see here. So you should memorize this up to about 7 minutes, and after that you can start being more creative when you use your air, what point you build your navy. If you're just starting, UEF is a good faction to use. You can be very non-aggressive, so people won't be mad at you as long as you don't get run over in mid spot, unlike the front spot where you really got to get the mass, or the back spot where you really got to get the air. On the naval spots it's okay to just play defensive. It's good to be aggressive, but you'll still be right. Now you see a T2 naval factory from Dim. Interesting to see he did not make any more T1 PGens. That must mean that his allies are making a lot of power. And now you see this T2 engineer, he's going to start making a T2 power with this engineer. And if you're playing UEF or Aeon or any other factions that make shields, your T2 power is very important. You really don't want to neglect that. See, minute 8, this frigate is going to go look for Hawk's early naval, as well as some bombers now coming out from Dim. You can see he's really going to be focusing on naval production. So at this point, coming up in minute 10, both players are going to be trying to get in out their first naval units. And if you can buy yourself a little extra time by bombing the NGs or having the NGs not build ships but build defensive structures, you're basically doing the right thing. So even if you lose the battle but you prevent building, you buy yourself a little bit of time. Really, the time to cross this ocean is one of the most important things in these naval battles. See some T2 drop some Schneck or VMC. See two of them. This is going to be interesting. So now you can see that Dim has come, he's got radar on this frigate, so it's a very nice frigate. He saw a pretty big factory, a lot of NGs here. But you can see Hawk doing the right thing, he's got air coverage. So Dim decided to retreat. He cannot see what's happening, so he's not going to throw this frigate away. Another good thing about these frigates from UEF is they show up as multiple units. If you look at Hawk's base, if he had radar here, he would see it's multiple units. And actually, you see it's multiple frigates from Dim, so from Hawk, so he did the right thing by not attacking. And now we see a T2 destroyer. It's a pretty early destroyer from Dim. So you can see Dim still doesn't have all of his T2 mass extractors. That's quite early Navy from Dim. He really did have the luxury based on what Hawk was making to equal a little longer. And now he is making this T2 power. So you see second cruiser, and most likely he's going to get a shield. So destroyer, cruiser, shield, pretty standard for UEF. Now this destroyer is going to the middle. And notice the way this air is patrolling, even though these are going to run out of fuel, it's still alright. And you can see this really massive power deficit. This just means that a lot of power that was coming for Dim was coming from the back player. So the back player right now is busy upgrading his ACU. It's taking a lot of power. That's why Dim around minute 11, this is usually when these ACUs get the upgrade, the back player. Minute 11, there's usually a big power deficit for your team. So you really want to watch out for that moment. Usually up until about 10 minutes you have enough power. Then there's going to be 2-3 minutes when you don't. Then you'll still have a lot around 13-14. And eventually when the back player builds up enough build capacity to make ASF, you're going to have to make your own power once again. But really that point, if you can spot when you get this power back, the back player usually sends an extra like 1,000 to the allies. You can try to get your own resource allocation. So something you can try doing. Or you can wait till you have about 4 PGens, 3-4 PGens, and get your resource allocation. I can see this cruiser from UEF, an excellent weapon if you just station it somewhere in the middle. Does a lot of bombardment. You can see a Navy as always should have T2 and T1. And good thing about UEF, it always looks bigger than it really is. Of course, Hawk is not using radar. He is using, there it is. You can see these extra spots. So even though it's only 3 frigates, it looks like a lot more. And now you can see the shield coming out for Dim. Excellent unit for UEF. So Dim looks like he's going to start controlling T1 air, and now he does have bombers coming in, and this is really the perfect target for your bombers, for T1 bombers, taking out those NGs. And Hawk is doing the right thing. He's making T2 submarines. That's the weakness for UEF. So a whole bunch of frigates plus T2 submarines, multiple subs. And that's really when you play Navy, you want to figure out what the other player is making, so you can start countering it. So if Dim realizes there's a bunch of subs in the water, and it looks like he did because he scouted, he's making torpedo boats. This move of making torpedo boats really cancels out the move by Hawk, who's making well, now he just made a cruiser. It might be a very timely cruiser. Yes, you see, he saved a lot of his NGs from death. And them being very aggressive with this UEF Navy, helping out Asti Als, and more destroyers coming in. So 2 destroyers, a cruiser, a bunch of frigates. That makes this Navy look big. And now he's going to get a bunch of torpedo boats, and you can see you can get those torpedo boats very quickly. They're about half the cost of a destroyer, so just like a sub is. And now Dim, notice, even though Dim is spamming Navy pretty hard, he has not stopped producing T3 mass extractors, or getting more mass extractors. That's one thing you should not do, is get all T2 mass extractors and then switch completely to Navy, because eventually the player who keeps on upgrading their economy will take you over. So you want to, unless it's a really bad situation, always keep on getting more and more eco. You see a pretty big deficit for them in terms of mass. So so plus 121 minus 132 means all of his projects about half speed. Now it's minute 15. He already has a couple T3 mass extractors. Also notice that he is getting T3 mass extractors before he has got all of his T2 mass extractors capped with mass. And if you have infinite build capacity, then it actually makes sense in terms of resources to get your mass extractors to T3. However, if that takes really long for you, it's better to just cap your mass extractors with mass storage. So there isn't a clear answer, but if you have a lot of NGs doing the work, get your T3 mass extractor before you get your mass storage. And you can see this fight. You gotta keep your shield back, your destroyers, frigates up. It's different than destroyer and Cybern. Destroyers and Cybern would be standing from far away bombarding. And you can see how good these subs are. Even though there are some torpedo boats here, they're not enough to counter all these subs. But it is going to be pretty close. If there was no torpedo boats here, it would be a very bad situation for them. You can see 3 torpedo boats together, a really good situation. Have a lot of anti-torpedo defense, so these subs can't even hit anything, plus the shield. That's what you should do with both your submarines and torpedo boats. Never send them alone. Keep them in groups of 4 or 5, and then they become nearly invulnerable to other torpedoes. So this is coming up on minute 16. I want to stop this video, so I hope this was useful to show you what you should do. So memorize the build, and actually the game's over for whatever reason. Memorize the build, and then remember to attack with T1 air, just like from Rock. Be ready to build your naval factories. Notice how many land factories DIM has to produce NGs, and never really stop upgrading. Always upgrade until you get all T3 mass extractors.